It's 3 in the morning. The world is silent, and you're lying in the darkness, alone with a question that should terrify anyone with an ounce of conscience. What happens to Hitler's soul after death? And Stalin's? What about all those who caused unimaginable suffering to millions of people? Where are they now? Did they just disappear? Or is there something waiting for them that is far more disturbing than any religion has ever dared to describe? This isn't some vague philosophical question. It's the most haunting question humanity can ask. And today, you will discover the answer through the most shocking visions ever recorded in the history of mediumship. Prepare yourself, because what you are about to hear will completely transform your understanding of justice, death, and what it truly means to be human. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to be born with an unexplainable darkness? Why certain individuals naturally gravitate toward cruelty? The answer is connected to something that happens beyond death, in dimensions that science cannot measure, but that directly affect our reality. And the most disturbing part of all, these souls may be closer to you than you imagine. Before we continue, if this question is making you question everything you thought you knew about life and death, hit that like button now and subscribe to the channel, because you're about to dive into the deepest and most disturbing knowledge about the fate of souls. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any revelation that could change your perspective on existence forever. Now, who could answer such an impossible question? Who would have access to information about the fate of souls beyond death? The answer has a name: Edgar Cayce. Known worldwide as the Sleeping Prophet, Cayce was the most documented medium in modern history. For 43 years, he entered a deep trance more than 14,000 times, channeling information that challenged science, medicine, and our understanding of reality. But Edgar Cayce wasn't some circus charlatan. His medical revelations saved lives. His prophecies about world events came true with frightening accuracy. American presidents consulted him in secret. Scientists studied his cases. And when he spoke about the spiritual world, his words carried the weight of decades of verifiable evidence. In his deepest trances, Cayce accessed what he called the Akashic Records, a kind of cosmic library where every thought, action, and consequence of every soul that has ever existed is eternally recorded. And it was through these records that he obtained information about the fate of humanity's darkest souls. What Cayce revealed about the fate of souls like Hitler's will destroy everything you think you know about divine justice. Forget the images of hell with cauldrons of fire and demons with pitchforks. Forget the idea of eternal punishment in flames. What really happens to these souls is something much deeper, much more psychologically disturbing, and infinitely more terrible than any physical torture our minds can imagine. According to Cayce, the universe doesn't operate on revenge. There is no sadistic God counting sins to apply eternal punishments. But that doesn't mean these souls escape the consequences. On the contrary, what awaits them is a kind of justice so perfect, so mathematically precise, that it will make you question whether free will truly exists, or if everything is part of a relentless cosmic design. Imagine for a moment that every action you've ever taken has created an energetic wave in the universe. Every cruel word, every moment of compassion, every selfish or altruistic choice has left a permanent mark on reality. Now imagine that, after death, you not only remember these actions, but you are forced to experience every single one of them through the eyes of those who were affected. For an ordinary soul, this would already be intense. But for someone like Hitler, who orchestrated the suffering of millions, what would it be like to experience 6 million deaths through the eyes of each victim? What would it be like to feel the terror of every child being separated from their parents? The hunger in the concentration camps? The despair of entire families being exterminated? Not for a few minutes or hours, but until every grain of suffering caused is completely understood and absorbed. This process that Cayce described is not punishment, it's cosmic education. It's as if the universe operates through a perfect mirror where every soul must face exactly what it created. But here's the detail that will blow your mind. This experience doesn't happen linearly. It's not like watching a movie of your actions. It's simultaneously experiential and timeless. Imagine Hitler being forced to experience not only the death of each victim, but also the impact those deaths had on future generations. The trauma passed down from parents to children, the families that never existed, the talents that never flourished, the scientific discoveries that never happened. Every ripple of consequence caused by his actions becomes an experiential reality that he must completely absorb. Now multiply that by every person who was ever affected by his decisions, not just the direct victims, but the soldiers who were corrupted by following his orders, the German families who lost children in a war he started, the entire countries that were devastated. Every tear, every nightmare, every moment of terror becomes part of that soul's conscious experience. Cayce explained that this is not an external torture imposed by a divine entity. It's a natural consequence of the spiritual laws that govern existence. It's like gravity. You can't escape it just because you don't believe in it. The expanded consciousness that comes after death makes it impossible to avoid total responsibility for the energetic waves you created during your physical life. And here's the most disturbing part. Throughout this entire process, the soul maintains its complete individuality. Hitler doesn't stop being Hitler. He experiences all of this while remaining fully aware of who he is and what he chose to do. There is no escape in madness, no loss of identity that could soften the impact. It's a pure confrontation with the reality of the consequences of every choice. But this is where the situation becomes truly terrifying. According to Cayce's visions, some souls become literally trapped in this state of confronting their actions. They cannot fully process the magnitude of what they caused, and this creates a kind of spiritual loop. Cayce called these dimensions stuck levels, levels where the soul is trapped between physical life and the higher spiritual planes. Imagine an expanded consciousness trying to simultaneously process the suffering of millions of people, but being unable to completely absorb that experience. It's like trying to download a file of trillions of terabytes onto an old computer. The system crashes. The soul remains indefinitely frozen in this state of partial confrontation with its consequences. In these stuck levels, the notion of time becomes distorted. A moment can feel like an eternity. The soul experiences a constant existential confusion, where it is no longer alive, but it also cannot move forward spiritually. It's a psychological limbo where consciousness is fragmented between denial of what it did and the impossibility of escaping the reality of its actions. Cayce described that Hitler and other similar souls often get stuck in these levels for periods that, in our earthly understanding, could last for centuries or millennia. They are not being punished by an external force. They literally cannot process the magnitude of their choices. It's as if their own consciousness becomes a self-imposed prison, where every attempt to escape only reinforces the bars of the cell. What's most frightening is that these trapped souls are not completely isolated from our reality. They can influence living people who are on similar vibrational frequencies, creating a cycle where the darkness of the past continues to affect the present. Now prepare for the most shocking revelation of all. According to Cayce, when a soul finally manages to process its actions and is ready to evolve, it doesn't just go to heaven, as traditional religions suggest. It has to reincarnate, but not in just any way. It reincarnates in the exact circumstances that will allow it to directly experience the other side of its past actions. Hitler, for example, according to Cayce's visions, would eventually reincarnate not as a powerful leader, but as someone who would experience racial persecution, extreme violence, and possibly death in circumstances similar to those he imposed on others. He would be born into a family that would suffer the exact type of oppression he created. Each subsequent life would be designed to create empathy through direct experience. But here's the part that will blow your mind. This means that some of the people around you, people you meet every day, could be souls who in past lives committed terrible acts and are now learning through suffering. That homeless person on the street might have been a cruel dictator in a past life. The person being bullied at work could be paying a karmic debt from when they were an oppressor. Cayce explained that this is not a cruel punishment, but a perfect educational process. The soul cannot truly understand the impact of its actions until it experiences the receiving end of them. It's impossible to develop real empathy for suffering you've never experienced. Hitler can only truly understand the horror of genocide by being a victim of genocide. And here's the most disturbing detail. These souls retain, on some subconscious level, the memory of who they were. This explains why some people have unexplainable fears, specific phobias, or a strange affinity for certain historical periods. It could be the soul's memory trying to process experiences from previous lives. But there's something even scarier happening right at this very moment. According to Cayce, the souls trapped in the stuck levels aren't completely disconnected from our world. They can establish energetic connections with living people who vibrate at frequencies similar to their darkness. And when that happens, they begin to influence the thoughts, emotions, and even actions of those people. Think of unexplainable cases of extreme violence that shock the world. Mass murders, where the perpetrator seems to have been taken over by something bigger than himself. Modern dictators who emerge with a cruelty that seems disproportionate to their personal experiences. Groups that develop ideologies of hate with an intensity that transcends normal sociological explanations. Cayce suggested that many of these situations involve lost souls influencing vulnerable people. It's as if these trapped souls are trying to complete through others what they couldn't resolve in themselves. They look for human channels to express their unresolved confusion, anger, and darkness. This doesn't mean these people are innocent victims. They have to have a predisposition, an opening for this type of influence. But it explains why certain forms of evil seem to have a timeless quality, as if they were echoes of past horrors repeatedly manifesting in new forms. And here's what should keep you up at night. You yourself could be influenced by these energies without realizing it. Every moment of unexplainable anger, every cruel impulse that seems to come from nowhere, every dark thought that arises without context, could be the echo of a lost soul trying to express itself through your consciousness. The question you need to ask is, how many of your darkest thoughts are truly your own? Now that you know these influences exist, how can you identify when you or someone close to you might be affected by these lost souls? Cayce provided specific clues, signs that work like a cosmic warning system. And when you learn to recognize these signs, your perception of reality will never be the same. The first sign is what Cayce called a heavy aura. Have you ever entered a room and immediately felt an unexplainable weight on your chest? A feeling that the air is thicker, harder to breathe? Or met someone who, despite being polite and seemingly normal, made you feel energetically drained after just a few minutes of conversation? This is the energetic signature of lost souls trying to establish a connection. But there's something even more revealing. Watch how animals and small children react to certain people. Dogs that are normally friendly start to growl for no apparent reason. Cats hide or become agitated. Babies who were calm start crying inconsolably. Cayce explained that animals and small children still retain a spiritual sensitivity that adults have lost. They can perceive presences that our rational minds ignore. Another disturbing sign is sudden personality changes with no apparent medical cause. A person who has always been kind suddenly develops cruel impulses. Someone who never showed interest in violence becomes obsessed with graphic movies, violent games, or disturbing online content. These aren't just phases. They can be indications that an external influence is manifesting. Also pay attention to recurring dreams with specific historical settings, especially periods of war or persecution. If you or someone you know constantly dreams of concentration camps, executions, or situations of extreme power without having any personal connection to these events, it could be the memory of a lost soul leaking through the subconscious. One of the most frightening signs is the unexplained knowledge syndrome. People who suddenly know specific historical details they never studied, who can describe places they've never visited, or who develop obsessive affinities with controversial historical figures. Cayce documented cases where people began to speak languages they never learned, or demonstrate skills they never developed, all because they were channeling memories of souls that couldn't move on. But perhaps the most disturbing sign of all is the justification of the unjustifiable. When a person develops the ability to rationalize cruelty with a cold, calculated logic that seems to come from an experience they've never had, It's as if they have access to a manual of oppression written by someone who practiced these techniques for decades. If you know someone who can explain methods of extreme psychological manipulation or social control strategies with a frightening naturalness, you may be observing a lost soul sharing its dark knowledge. But here comes the part that could change everything. Cayce didn't just identify the problem, he provided the solution. And this solution places unimaginable power in your hands. According to his revelations, you can literally help free these lost souls, and in the process protect yourself and those around you from the negative influences they exert. The most powerful tool is something most people completely underestimate: directed prayer. But we're not talking about traditional prayers asking for protection or blessings. We're talking about praying for your enemies, for those who have caused suffering, for souls you don't even know, but who are trapped in cycles of darkness. Cayce explained that when you genuinely pray for the spiritual well-being of a lost soul, you create an energetic bridge that can help it find the way to process its actions and move on. It's as if your prayer becomes a light in an absolute darkness, offering direction to someone who has been lost for decades or centuries. Imagine for a moment the transformative power of this. You praying for Hitler's soul. Not asking for his forgiveness, not minimizing his crimes, but sending healing energy so that he can finally and completely process the horror he caused and begin the journey of karmic reparation. Your prayer could be the factor that finally allows that soul to leave its trapped state and begin to experience the educational consequences of its actions. But here's what will blow your mind. By doing this, you are not just helping a lost soul. You are raising your own vibration to a level that makes it impossible to be influenced by these dark energies. It's as if you become a spiritual beacon that automatically repels low frequencies while attracting protection from higher dimensions. Cayce described that people who regularly pray for lost souls develop a kind of spiritual immunity. They become able to enter heavy environments without absorbing negative energy. They can interact with problematic people without being affected by destructive influences. It's as if genuine compassion creates an impenetrable energetic shield. And there's yet another level of power in this practice. When you pray for dark souls, you are actively participating in the cosmic healing process. You are helping the universe resolve spiritual traumas that affect all of humanity. Every lost soul that manages to break free from its trapped state is one less source of negative influence in the world. You are literally helping to heal the collective darkness of humanity. But be careful. This is not a practice to be taken lightly. It requires genuine spiritual courage, because when you direct prayer toward dark souls, they may initially react with resistance. You might experience temporary increases in nightmares, unexplainable anxiety, or confrontations with your own dark aspects. It's as if the lost soul is testing your sincerity before accepting your help. Now we come to the most disturbing and hopeful moment of Cayce's revelations, because not all lost souls manage to find their way back. There is a point of no return that goes beyond any concept of hell you have ever imagined. Cayce described that some souls, after unimaginably long periods trapped in confrontation with their actions, simply disintegrate. It's not annihilation in the sense of ceasing to exist completely. It's something much deeper and more terrible. The individuality, the personality, everything that made that soul unique, gradually falls apart until only energetic fragments remain. It's as if the very structure of consciousness collapses under the weight of its choices. Cayce explained that this happens when a soul becomes so identified with its destructive actions that it completely loses the ability to conceive of any other way of being. It becomes a voluntary prisoner of its own darkness, repeatedly refusing opportunities for growth and transformation until the structure that holds its individuality simply can no longer sustain itself. Imagine Hitler, after experiencing the suffering of millions of victims, refusing to accept responsibility, refusing to let that experience transform him, remaining stuck in denial and self-justification for so long that his own soul begins to fragment. What's left is no longer Hitler as a conscious individuality, but just energetic echoes of hatred and destruction wandering aimlessly. But here's the twist that will make you question everything about free will and destiny. Even in these extreme cases, Cayce insisted that there is always a spark, an essential core that can be rekindled. No matter how fragmented the soul becomes, no matter how lost it may seem, there is always a possibility of redemption if it chooses to accept help. And this help can come from unimaginable places, from souls who have evolved beyond the need for reincarnation and dedicate their existence to rescuing the lost, from the collective energy generated by living people who pray for these dark souls, even from their own victims who, after processing their trauma in other dimensions, choose to forgive and offer spiritual assistance. Cayce described cases where souls that seemed completely lost were literally rebuilt through compassionate intervention. As if genuine love and focused prayer could gather the fragments of a shattered consciousness and give it a new opportunity to choose a different path. This means that right now, as you listen to these words, you have the power to influence the fate of souls who committed the worst crimes in history. Subscribe to the channel and hit that like button to get access to more stories like this. Your prayer, your compassion, your vibrational uplift could be exactly what a lost soul needs to finally find its way back to the light. The final question Cayce leaves us with is both terrifying and hopeful. In a universe where even the darkest souls can find redemption, what is your responsibility? What is your role in this cosmic dance between darkness and light, between damnation and salvation?